thank you for coming. This is our first of the premier event, our first Thursday nature seminar series. Surprisingly, first Thursday every month, starting today. 7 p.m., different topics each month. So check out the website and see what's coming next. And we are very excited to have Ron Wolf with us. He's Connecticut's Reptile Man. He's worked as a reptile and aquatic specialist for over 11 years. He rescues reptiles and he dedicates his time to educate people on these exotic pets. He's going to show you today proper habitats for reptiles and amphibians and explain the differences in the tropical versus the drier climate models. He's going to introduce you to some very, a wide variety of reptiles and amphibians, starting with
Okay. Now, rather than be this part of the new adult education program, in addition to just showing that really impressive animals, we want to try to stress some of the issues that come up trying to take care of these animals in your home. Because they come from out in the jungle, they come from a lot of different environments, and you got to try to recreate an environment that will make them comfortable in your home. And it's not always as easy as it sounds. And we're going to start with the snakes. Because we've got one right here. And the snakes have a whole name right after them. And one of the issues of bringing these animals into your home is the rest of the people that live in there have to agree with that on bringing one of these things into your home. And a lot of times, young men like to have pet snakes. And especially my son's age, Nicole's age, like to have one of these kind of animals. And one thing you have to guarantee is to never, ever have to go tell your mom, I can't find it. Because that does not go over well. It does not go over well at all. And these guys are amazing snake artists when they're young. And when they get bigger, even then, I've had a lot of big snakes like this, and you would think that if it got out of its cage, it would be fairly easy to find. And I found that it's not. They could find amazing places to hide, places where you wouldn't even look. I had one big snake get out and check every inch of the ground. And it took about 2 hours, and I glanced up, and it was coiled, like stretched out, just like that across picture frames. It balanced itself on picture frames. Went right in, and I looked at it, and there he was. And it was near the corner, and he had climbed up using his own body strength in the corner, and then stretched across and got across this thing without falling. Amazing feat. So, it never occurred to me to look up. So, that's the issue here. When you got big snakes like this, they're tough, they live in the jungle. The bigger the cage you got, the harder it is to create that tropical environment in a cage for a big snake. A lot of people have brought me their older big snakes. And a lot of, I remember one fellow who had big Burmese python. He said, oh, the snake's got mate, it's got a little room. And he had a cage with a lamp on it, and he left it open, so he could have a whole room to himself. And he assumed that the snake got cold, just go back in his cage. Well, the snake doesn't think that way. And he just went to the corner and hid. And when the guy brought him over, I was on the 3rd floor, and I had to buzz him in. So I opened up the door, heard him come up the stairs, and you could hear him. And all the way up the stairs, and he's got the back and he's saying, yeah, she's talking to me. That's what she says. That's how she talks to me. And I was like, yeah, that's how she says. He's bringing me back. I've got a upper respiratory problem that is causing me to wheeze like that. And he wasn't even aware I was sick. and the thing was very sick, and that animal didn't make it. So the bigger the pet snake gets, the harder it is to recreate his environment. We got this little, put it back, he's getting heavy. This is the same kind of snake, and it's like one of the most expensive snakes that anyone has ever had to get rid of. And in the past, when I get good snakes, several occasions, the reason that a young fella would have to get rid of his snake was because he got a new girlfriend and brought her over to his house, and she saw the snake and said, no, I'm not even coming in your driveway until you get rid of that thing and not put it in the house because some people are afraid of snakes. This is Becky. This is an unusual animal. It's the same kind of snake, only it's an albino version of that big snake we just had. And so I go up and buy this. It costs a lot of money. And this young lady that I know came across it, somebody wanted it anymore, and gave it to her. And she thought, she had gotten Christmas early. She was so happy. And she brought it home, and her boyfriend said, no, that is not being in our house under any condition at all. And when she called me up, because she showed me it when she first got it, she was so thrilled with it. And then she called me up and said, can you take it? Because my boyfriend won't let her bring it home. And I reminded her, it would be a lot easier to find a new boyfriend than it would be to find another snake like this. You're not going to come across this every day. I want you to think about it before you give it to me, because I'm not giving it to you back once I have it in my house. And this is an albino boa. One of the most expensive snakes I've ever has been dumped on. And people would breed these like that. Now, he's little now, he's still going to get into that big one. And the big problem used to be with the Burmese python were one of the first big snakes that came out in albino. And it was beautiful, yellow, white, more vivid than this even. When they were little, they had red spots near his tail that were flaming red. They were gorgeous snakes. Only those snakes would get as big as that first boa we had out in 9 months. They just got big real quick. And people would call me up I've got a 10-foot or 12-foot Burmese python, and you'd go there and it would range from 9 to 12 feet, usually 50, 60 pounds. But a lot of times it would say it's 19, 20 feet, and it was 100 pounds, and you'd get there and it would still be 9, 10 feet. Put it in a duffel bag, and that was it. I remember one guy called me up and he said, I've got a 15 feet Burmese python, 15-foot Burmese python. I was like, okay. And I bought a duffel bag. We went down his basement. He had this big cage, and the plexiglass was cracked on it. And this snake was 15 feet. And it weighed almost 200 pounds. It was almost as big around as a telephone pole. The tip of his tail was round as a quarter. His head was bigger than my foot. And it's not fitting in my duffel bag. So he had this great big canvas bag that he made. We got it in that, and we zippered it up, and got it on my truck. And I got to where I was going, and I was able to slide it off the truck. And I can't bring this up the stairs by myself even. It's huge. I had to call up one of my volunteers who didn't really believe me at first. They had a snake that was big enough where they needed 2 people to carry it upstairs, but we got there, and we carried it up, and we had to put it in the cage. We had a big cage with one that weighed 70 pounds. We weighed it at one of the shows that we were at, and 70 or 68 pounds actually, but it was a big snake. We opened up the door of the cage and let that thing go in, and I had to kind of guide its head to make sure it got in the cage. And the first try, he just like, nah, I think I'm going to go that way. And I had to try to yank it back and get him pointed in the cage, and he just went in. But when I turned around, the kid that was helping me was like in the other room behind the door going, "Did you get him?" Yeah. So, I mean, he curled up next to that 70-pound one, and it made it look like that one compared to the first one. It was an incredible difference in size. And they do get that big. Now there's a big problem with them in Florida. They're running wild. They got pictures of one that tried to eat alligator and exploded. And, but there's a lot of them down there. They're breeding in the wild. So you want to, the most important thing when you're thinking of a snake kind of pet is to find out the adult size, how big they get. Because when they say they get big, they're not kidding. And a lot of people, when that 6-foot snake that we first put out, was thinking, that's a big snake. And if we still had some of the ones that we had before, and you would be amazed at how big these animals can get.
Where are those?
South America. These are bred in captivity. Now, if you really wanted a snake for a pet, this is one of the easier species of snakes to take care of. These are corn snakes. They're bred in different colors now. You've got some very beautiful snakes that in this species. They got, years ago, there was a guy down in Florida. In Florida, when you're looking to catch new snakes, you drive around at night when it's raining out, and all sorts of stuff crossing the road. And he was driving down the road one day and sees something slither, and he pulls over and grabs it, and it was like the great-great-great-grandmother of like one of these things. And turned it into quite a profitable business by breeding it with a normal snake and then be able to finally breed more. When they first came out with it, they were like $1,500. Now, baby corn snakes come in all the different colors, they're all pretty much the same price. But they're not hard to take care of. You can keep them in a little higher than room temperature. I mean, corn snakes are native to the United States. You can find corn snakes in like southern New Jersey. They're not that tropical where you need extreme conditions to keep them healthy. When they breed them, people that breed these snakes keep them in like the most basic of conditions. They've got these big rack systems with boxes that fit right in, so there's no space for them to even get out. They got a bowl of water, they got newspaper, and they got empty spare boxes, so all they gotta do is pull one out. So they got newspaper and water in it, they switch it from one to the other. They control the temperature by wicked expensive methods where they can control the whole room. And they cool it down and then warm it back up, stimulate the breed, put the pairs together, get billions of eggs. Not hard at all, but in a home environment, a lot of this stuff, and if like you bought a snake kit, it doesn't really kind of give you the best conditions for wood skin animals. There's a lot of things available. Some got like a little rug, and the first issue in the little rug thing, even though it's not harmful to the animal, it stinks really quick. When these things poop, they got a high metabolism, they eat, they poop rather quickly. And if the cage is stinking, you know, then, and especially if it's in some young fellow's room, your mom's not gonna like that very much. So you gotta keep on top of that. It's not like as bad as a dog or a cat where they're pooping every day. You feed them, and in a couple of days they poop. So you can stay on top of it pretty easy. It's not hard at all. And some of the things that, the way I keep the animals that I keep now, will help you keep the tank cleaner and better. I'm going to give these back to this young fella. Everything that you get as far as reptiles goes that lives outside. So the best thing you can do for it is to recreate the outside. They've got different like substrates that they sell. I use the same thing for pretty much everything. It's still early in the season, so I wasn't able to get the seed that I normally use. But this main stuff that I use in the tanks is coconut bedding. Comes in a brick, comes in a big bag, and it's pretty much like dirt, but without any kind of bugs or stuff in it. It's clean dirt. The fresh brick can't possibly have any kind of, bad stuff in it. And what I discovered was that stuff grows in there. Where I work at the pet store, we had a big container of this, and he had a bird in the cage, and he was throwing seeds out of his cage. And I was scooping it out to do the cages over. I'm finding these long twines growing in there. But the birds throwing seeds in there. So at first I started doing it with the wild bird seed, but there were things in the wild bird seed that weren't seeds and didn't grow and made it moldy. I mean, like you look on the other side, it's only been like 2 or 3 days, and you see there's already a little bit of grass growing. So what I used, and what I found was that if you go to like Home Depot and you go where all the grass seed and stuff is, you've got the kind of grass seed that you put in spots in your yard where like nothing will grow, and it works, but it doesn't root deep, it grows really quick. So I put it down in there, in that coconut bedding, it grows for 2-3 weeks. And it kind of roots enough where with the plants growing in there, when the animals poop, I mean, you usually get the big poops out. When I started doing it, I was using little tropical frogs, and you didn't even see their poops. But once the grass started growing, you spray it down every day, and it doesn't stink. Because it smells like your lawn. And this guy here, I don't even know if you see hides in there. This is my African bullfrog. They call them pixie frogs. When we sell them, they said about this big. They're old little frogs hopping all over the place, and they eat crickets that are almost the full size of them. And as they get bigger, you start feeding them mice, and they just pack on the weight. And they'll get 3 times the size. They get enormous. And what he does, what I'll do with that, now the seeds in there is new now. I go in back and get them all situated. He'll burrow in it. He'll push it all to the back and burrow in it. You can see his head. That's what they do in real life. They sit there and burrow, and they wait for something to walk by, and they grab it. If they could fit it in their mouth, done. I've had small rats before. You can eat big things, and that's why I keep growing big. But other than that, they'll just sit there and wiggle a bit, and in a couple of days, do a huge poop, and then move to another part of the thing. If I take that poop out, because you see this guy's poop, no problem. And all I gotta do is add a little cover up, and it doesn't get to the point where it's all septic. When the first time I had a tropical tall tank with dirt in it, I had tree frogs, and I had one of these. This is a pest gecko. I'm in trouble now. I had these. These are from New Caledonia. They're a fairly new lizard to the trade, and they can be kept at temperatures a little bit lower than most of the lizards need. They don't really have a big UV requirement, and I was keeping tree frogs in there with it. There was some firebelly toads that lived on the bottom, and it was a tank that opened in the front. I set tanks up to photograph in, and doors over the front. I had live plants in the center, and put different colored plants in to get pictures of the frogs and the lizard on different color, flowers and stuff. And then put a new one in, and I had the grass growing, and when it grew out, I would just kind of sweep up the dead grass and sprinkle more down on that base layer, and the next generation would grow even better. So I was like on my third layer, and I'd gotten a new frog to put in there, so I was all happy with the plant. And when I took out the whole plant, I had to dig a little bit deeper, and I found a frog that I thought was missing for months. It was like I had glued the cover on the top because I thought he got on the top, and he wasn't going. Went down the side of the flower pot and dug a little burrow down there. Had a little cave. And you normally couldn't do that in just the substrate by itself because it gets dry and it kind of gets too loose to really make a little cave in. This guy had a little cave in there, and he must have been coming out at night and eating because he was twice the size he was when I put him in there. And now I got like more stuff in there, so I set up a bigger tank, moving all the animals over. I'm going through the soil, which is now like that deep because it was like 3 layers. And it's like, this stuff doesn't even like stink one bit. How long has it been since I took anything out of here? I said, it was 6 months. Like, holy crap, that's a long time. You would think that it would be all disgusting down there, and it wasn't. I reused the same soil again for 2 new frogs, and it's quite economical that way. And if you're going to do like with a planted tank like that, if you got fake stuff in there for them to climb on, once you got the grass growing up all around the fake stuff, it makes that whole tank look like it's all real stuff, even if it is fake. Because like, no one's going to put that one fake grass in the tank, you got to go. And it looks nice. If you throw more crickets in there now, and they got food, they'll eat the grass, they'll mow it right down. And you got healthier food animals now for your lizard because they've got something in them. They're just not exoskeleton and cricket guts anymore. And we're going to try to put this back now. If it gets loose or jumps or anything, don't laugh. And you have the ability to cut that out later, right? But there you get in there. Now, other lizards that are available, we got one. So I make sure I don't have his toe or tail caught in there. The other lizards, they start getting bigger. You got again, adult size thing. This lizard's got a decent size, it's like blue-tongue skink. And you can probably guess why they call them blue-tongue skink. But keeping these things, again, when you got that kind of ecosystem, one of the big problems for bigger lizards is when you feed them and they're going to eat stuff that's in the cage, and especially if they're trying to catch crickets, and they grab a cricket in a mouthful of any kind of the substrate, it's not a pleasant thing. And they don't have the means to really, you got something I can rinse out with? They're like, for the next, trying to figure out how to get this stuff out of their mouth. And some of the substrates are worse than others. If it's really, really dry, it's going to stick to the wet tissue in their mouth like flour to wet hands and coat the inside. So with the grass growing, once you got a good layer down with this kind of animal, you did a decent lay it down like you're growing a golf course layer, you got a nice, and if he goes to grab a mouse with a cricket in the grass and he got some grass in his mouth, it's not that big of a deal. It was rooted deep enough, and he goes, it's going to stay put. And he didn't get him off of bad stuff that he could check on. So it makes a safer environment for him. It keeps the humidity of the cage at a level where when they go to shed, if it's too dry, they don't shed correctly. They shed in pieces. It gets stuck on their toes or around their face. It could get stuck on their eyes, and it makes it difficult for the animal. But if you have the correct environment, you shed good, they're healthier and happier in the long run. But we got the bearded.
What you want to do?
Oh, you got the teddy bear?
Yeah, take it.
All right, we're gonna, because this is a better demonstration of, they get big. This is a red table. Years ago, red table, they're a South American monitor lizard. And years ago, someone came into the pet store I worked at with a cold, skinny lizard that they found out in their driveway in the middle of January. On a kind of warm day, it was laying out there trying to get a little bit warm. It was so skinny, you could see his hip bones, and it was in pretty sad shape. And she brought it home and told a friend she found an iguana. And the friend called the vet and said, "What do iguanas eat?" And the vet said, "Lettuce." So it probably wasn't even a good reptile vet in the first place. And they tried to give it lettuce, it wouldn't eat it. And fortunately, someone told her, "Well, go to that store. There's a guy there that will take care of it." And fortunately, I was working that night. And this kind of lizard isn't really a usual kind of lizard you find in pet store. You have to go to a place that specializes in exotic pets. There are a couple of different species of tegus, and the red ones are more expensive than the black and whites and the black and golds. And so you're looking at like someone paid at one point like $200 probably for this lizard, and then either let it escape or let it go, because it was wandering around for a long time to get that bad and skinny. And we got it back into shape, and this is it now. So he's a big fella, but it requires a huge tank. And I'm sure the person that got it didn't know how big it was going to get, or wouldn't need it, and all that stuff, and decided like that's just too much. So when you're gonna go, if you're gonna get any kind of lizard, you can't always count on like where you're going, where you're gonna buy it, for them to always know everything about that lizard and whether or not they're gonna tell you the stuff that you don't want to hear. So it's a good idea to always do your research on, you find an animal you like, oh, those are cool. Then go online and find out more stuff about it before you bring it home. Because otherwise, you don't want to end up with an animal that you're afraid of. These can get like pretty nippy and nasty. He's big and fat and lazy now, so and he's been around people here for years, so he's like, nah, I'm with the program. You can take me out, I'm cool. Don't let me go ever again. But I've had these before where when you went to pick them up, they just leapt at you to try to bite you. They do not like people. The very first one I got, his name we couldn't even say out loud here because it had a bad word in it because he was so mean. But the people that had him were meaner by the way they kept him, so you can't really blame him. He went through some rough stuff, and he had no fingers and toes left because the guy was so afraid of him. When the cage would get dirty, he would just put more wood chips on top of it. When I got the cage, it was a big cage, and the wood chips were like that deep. I couldn't even see where the lizard was. I started digging through it, and I found layers and layers and layers of shed skin. We're like, when was the last time you cleaned this cage? Never. He was afraid of it. But if you have an animal that you're afraid of, that's what it boils down to. You know, every time I go in there, I think he'll either bite at me or try to hit me with his tail. In your own cage. I'm not doing it anymore. And that's what happens. But now, so we're gonna.
What does that thing eat? That big lizard?
What does he eat?
Yeah.
Mice, rats.
Oh,
Yeah,
They can really bite you good.
Oh yeah, they got all the monoliths got wicked sharp teeth. And I remember even ones that aren't trying to bite it. I had a great big one, and I was feeding him a rat, and I'm doing this over his cage. I forgot, 'cause he's big and fat and lazy looking, but he can still jump. He just jumped, and And he got the whole mouse and the tip of my thumb, and razor sharp teeth. You get hurt.
How big's that thing getting in the wild?
If you ever watched that show with Jeff Corbin, one of those animal shows, he used to show him holding a great big one in both arms. It was like that big around. You get like 3-4 feet, but bulky and fat. He's got a way to go. He gets bigger. But the last section of animals is going to cover turtles, because turtles are, of all the different pets, turtles can be quite accidentally abused with incorrect care. And the little water turtles are like the number one hate people kind of things, because they've been so poorly marketed. The little baby turtles that they sell now, like in New York and in Myrtle Beach, different places where it's flea markets, where they sell live stuff. They sell little baby turtles in little tiny plastic things, and they kind of imply that, yeah, you just keep them there. So that's how it gets out of the water. And then the people come into the pet store and say, what, the little turtles in New York? I want to get a little bigger for them. Well, the correct way to take care of one of these turtles, it costs $150 minimum. They need a fish tank with a filter and expensive lights to boot. They need deep water. And when you get the little turtles, they keep it in that much water. These kind of turtles are deep water turtles. You want full tank of water so they can swim around. And they're much cooler watching in the water than they are in a little cup like that. They're like acrobats in the water, they swim all over the place. But if they don't get the right kind of light in the tank, they die. And they're cute and they're beautiful little things, and people and the ones that people do take care of them, then they start getting bigger. This turtle's going to get the size of a plate, easy, and they'll live for 40 years. They're fairly tough. And the best way to take care of one of these turtles is here in Connecticut. If you have a yard, and you want a turtle, then you go to Walmart and buy a kiddie pool and set it up in your yard, put a rock in the middle, and let it spend the whole spring and summer out in the yard so it gets actual sunlight without glass coming between it. You can go down to the pond and catch whatever, scoop up whatever pond plants are in there, put them right in that kiddie pool, and because they're getting sunlight, they'll grow just like they're in a pond. And you can take them in at night if you want to, but you don't have to unless you got like big things that come in your yard and eat your other pets. They're gonna leave these guys alone. They're gonna have to work for that. And the one thing you might want to consider is putting like maybe a little fence around it, because my son's mom, when he was little, he used to like to catch turtles, and we'd go catch the baby turtles, and then every time someone brought me a redheaded slider, I would let the baby turtle go and replace it in the kiddie pool with a redheaded slider. And so now we didn't take anything out of the wild. And we had like 4 of them out there, and it rained real hard for like 3 days. And I was going to pick my son up, I was coming up the street, and I see this turtle hauling across the road. I'm like, that looks like it's ready. It is. Stopped and picked it up. I'm like, where you come from? And when I got up to the house, like, the rain had overflowed that little kiddie pool, and they just like surfed out like that. We're free. And he kept going. But if he had kept going and gotten to the nearest pond, he probably would have been all right. Because I shouldn't even confess this because we recorded, but like one end of 4, we had probably like, I wasn't quite sure how many we had out there. And I went to pick up my son, and his mom was saying, now you gotta bring them turtles in tonight, it's gonna get cold. And we set something up inside. I said, all right, how many are there? I said, 4. So mom, in the dark, caught 4 turtles, we set them up, got cold that night. That little thing froze solid, as far as I knew, over the winter. And then I remember I'm spraying to warm it up, and I went to pick him up, and there's a turtle out in the rock. And I was like, did you put them turtles out there already? No. Apparently, there were 5. And that one, and because they didn't drain the pond, just left it out there, and there was vegetation and stuff in there. And he learned whatever he had to learn to hibernate. And woke up that next spring, like, probably hated me, but he lived. That was the point. He could handle it. So in a regular pond, if you got into the pond, he would have probably lived. You don't want it. Doesn't mean if you have one and it's getting big and you don't want it anymore, you just let it go in a regular pond, because that would be against the law. But now, speaking of against the law kind of things, and then the subject of turtles, this is a little box turtle. And sometimes people find these in their yard, or you see them crossing the street. And it's very tempting to want to take them home, because they come in some beautiful colors. And sometimes they can even seem like, that can't be just something that lives out in the woods. It's too pretty, it's too friendly, it's eating right out of my hands, had to be someone's pet, I'm bringing them home. It wasn't someone's pet. It lives in Connecticut, they're gorgeous turtles. And there's less of them now because there's so many people saying, oh, I think he's following me. No, he wants to come home. And it's tempting, but you gotta avoid that temptation, because most of the time when people find these things moving, especially if they're crossing the street, they don't usually like cruise around just to check out other neighborhoods when they're on the move. Most of the time it's going to be a female with eggs in her, and she's looking at a place to lay them eggs. So if you bring her home, you're not only taking one out of the wild, you're probably taking 6 out of the wild if you got her in a cage as in the correct kind of environment where it could burrow, because that's what you got with the grass growing. You'd be able to burrow and she'd be able to lay eggs if that was what she was doing. And with that stuff growing in there, if you kept it right, it'd probably hatch in that stuff. You can't heat it, it'd be the right temperature, it'll be the right humidity, you'd have a better chance of doing good in that kind of environment. But you're checking them from the wild, and you would have a way better chance if you left them there. So when you're rescuing turtles out the road, the very most you want to do is move them to the other side in the direction they were going. And they'll appreciate that, because they don't want to get run over. And the only other thing is, like, I know that nobody that came all the way here to see things about animals would to do this, but there are people who, like snapping turtles especially, that deliberately try to just run them over. And because you get them out to the vet, and you see them on the side of the road and squish. And you know, when you got a turtle this big, it didn't get hit by accident. If there was a rock that big, you wouldn't, I think I'm gonna see my tiger can handle that. So they did it on purpose. For, I don't know if they thought they had a good reason. They don't, well, I can't say they don't bother anything. They do have a slight impact on wildlife, but wildlife should be able to have a slight impact on other wildlife because they're part of the system. So, if you find one, let them free. Now there are other kind of tortoise that you can get, and of all the reptiles, they probably make the most kind of pet that will be social with you, that will recognize its name, that will come to you when you call it. Lizards aren't going to do that. Snakes sure aren't going to do it. But tortoise have personality. And Russian tortoise are a good start because you only get about that big. But once you get past Russian tortoise, the redfoot tortoises, the yellowfoot tortoises are pretty big. They get about this big. No. This is an African bird tortoise. This is to kind of show you about the size like a redfoot or a yellowfoot would get. You get a little bit bigger than this. And this size isn't really a bad tortoise if you were going to keep that. It's certainly not as big as a dog, so it's not unmanageable sized animal. The tortoise are especially ones that will greatly benefit from being kept outside. The big animal this big isn't going to really have any problems with like your local wildlife. If you've got a fenced-in area, you know, they could pull them in. The rumors about them having like a big problem and being very competitive with rabbits is greatly overdone. It's the tortoise and the hare stuff is Nah, the rabbits won't bother them, they won't run around the cage laughing at them about how slow they are. So you can keep them out in the yard for a good 6 months out of the year. You get sunlight, grow big. But this kind of turtle gets way bigger than the Pilgrim and the redwoods and the elephants and most of the other choices you get. And how fast they get big is the amazing part of it. They have different rates of growth, and it depends on the importance of the lighting. If they get outside or if they have a good source of UVB, these things can grow incredibly fast. First one I ever had, which is when the guy got it, it was like that big, a little smaller than that little box tortoise. It was the cutest little thing. It was like a little miniature tortoise that walked all proud. And just like if you saw someone selling one, you would have to buy it. They were $60, and I was like, "Where did you get it? New Jersey?" I might go, because it was adorable. And then the next time I saw this guy, I went over his house. When you see that turtle, and now it was that big. And I'm like, get out of here, that's not even the same turtle. You probably killed that little baby when you're such a loser. And they wouldn't sell you a baby one. They said, no, you better start with a big one, mister, because you're just not doing it. And it was the same turtle. And it didn't take long before, he had a wooden cage, and I happened to set it up. And because it was tall, we took the UV light, which is just a fluorescent light, and we screwed it right to the back of the cage. So the turtle was like that close to the UV light. And he got 100% of that UV output. And when he finally called me up and said, my wife said to get rid of it, because what these things do, they like to wedge themselves in like a corner. And once they get there, they want to make sure they're good wedged in. So for a good 40 minutes a night, he was sitting there going, like, what is that noise? Turtle, don't worry about it. We'll make it stop. It's not going to stop. And so he says, all right, come get it. I can't handle it anymore. And I brought like a dog carrier. I figured it would be maybe that size. And it was like twice that size. I couldn't even fit it in the dog carrier. It was like, I took the top off and put it in that way, and then take it all apart when I got home. And I made the mistake of, when I went to pick him up like finger under the shell like that, because I saw a picture of someone picking up a big turtle like that, and I thought, well, that must be the way to do it. And I'm like, because he pulled his legs in, I almost snapped my finger off. And they pulled him tight. You could pull his head in and block up with them, those arms, and nothing's going to get in there. And if you did that while your finger was in there, you kind of have to wait till he was ready to come back out. I don't know what kinds of coaxing we could do, but they get enormous. And I'll give you like the final example of what enormous is. No, you wanted to know, all right. Okay, this one's a little bit older, like about 4 years older.
Wow.
Might not come out because he had to ride up on the truck, so he got a little bit cold. But they get bigger than that still. Crystal is his name. We know for a fact that it's a boy, even though it's got kind of a girl's name. It's been statistically proven that boy turtles like girl names, so there's no issue there. But we had him out in the turtle pen with a redfoot tortoise about this big that apparently was a girl, and he liked her a real lot. And they were separated, and he would tear down the fence to get at her, tear it down, the wire fence, climb over it, burrow under it. I'm getting over there. And the girl would be coming over to his side of the fence like, you can do it. And they tried, and I never knew tortoises made noise before, but they made noise. And what is, and you're hearing this kind of and it just wasn't possible because, you know, she was the same species. And the big factor was like that. He was trying as hard as he could. And those kind of turtles, because they get big so fast. Now, if you look at Florida or Texas where it's warm all year long, that's why the market is flooded with them, is because they will breed like crazy. And in the ideal environment of getting fed every day, not living out way out in the desert, they'll lay 2 clutches of eggs instead of just 1, and with 30, 40 eggs in each one. And so all you need is 1 boy and a herd of girls. And the guys that if you let us sell them, they know how big they're getting. And they're getting $60 for the cute little babies that are pumping out 2 loads of a year. And they'll tell the people, "Come to get some food for you. We'll take it back, no charge." So that's how they get their stock. So they get their big turtles back that people grew for 2-3 years until they got huge. Hey, we'll take them back. You want to buy another baby? You already got a cage. And it keeps on an ever-ending chain. And
Ron, how large do they get? What's the largest?
they could get, we don't have anything here. That's like 50, 60 pounds. They can get 200 pounds. They're big enough where a small kid could ride them when they're full grown. And
Are they as large as that Galapagos tortoise?
not as big. The African Sperti is like the 3rd largest tortoise in the world. The Galapagos are the #1, and the Aldabra are #2. The Aldabra is like an island that kind of split off the Galapagos and closer to Africa. It's nearby, so the turtles are the same. Those are the big dinosaur-looking ones. I saw them in the Indiana Zoo. The legs are like that big around. They're a huge animal.
That thing was in the desert?
Yeah, they live in the desert. Yep. Up in the, you know, they're eating grassy stuff. So if you put them in the yard where they got lush vegetation all year long, they grow.
They want ponds too, they like to swim?
Nah, that thing would sink like a stone.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but like in captivity, one of the advantages of a dry climate animal, like if you take him, you know, rather than having to clean all the huge poops out of the cage with the egg and stuff, once a week we'll take him, put him in the tub, and you hit it with a warm shower, and it thinks it's raining out because it rains once in a while in Africa. They get like a nice storm, you know, on the dry parts, and that is when they will poop. Because if it's raining out, that's like nature's toilet paper. When that rain starts hitting them, there you go. And let it wash right down the tub, and that's like one, I mean, because an animal that big can poop. And even though a lot of animals that live in dry climates, like a lot of snakes, they got some serious poop to the bigger snakes. But the pee kind of looks like plaster. And what that is it's pee without as much liquid. They want to conserve liquid, so the pee is like a solid white chalky stuff. And these guys, when he poops, there's also like a 2-liter soda bottle of liquid too that comes out. And so keeping one in captivity, the bigger they get, it becomes an issue. It's got its own room now. It has to have its own room. It's heated. You got to line the floor so you don't have that 2-liter soda bottle of pee just like absorbing in that wood and making sure that that place smells like turtle forever. And then that's only like for the cold months of the year, and then he's back outside and he's happy. But when you got a big animal from Africa and you live in Connecticut, you have to kind of adjust them as best you can. You have to build for them. That's why it's important to, if you're going to bring anything home, you know, if you were going to buy a dog, you would look at the mother before you just pick the puppy at random, because you want to know, well, how big does it get? Because if you only had a little apartment, you probably wouldn't want to be looking at St. Bernard puppies, because they're going to be that big. And the same goes with these animals, only where you probably have seen how big a collie gets or how big a German Shepherd gets to know, well, they get pretty big. I mean, not many people have seen how big the reptiles get, and you can't always count on when you're getting them. Like, if you go up to the reptile shows where you're gonna have a bigger choice of stuff, those people rented a table at a big building, and they don't want to bring the animals they brought with them back home. So when you're saying, anaconda, are they all right, Dad? Oh, yeah, they're cool. They feel like Robert, and they're very friendly. They're going to tell you everything you want to hear, because they want you to buy it and take it home with you. If you go to like a regular pet store, those animals live there. Like, you come to my pet store, half the time, I don't want to, the animal's happy here. I want to make sure there's someone that knows how to take care of it and is going to give it a better home than when he's in, takes it, not someone that's going to give it like a worse home. And I'm not trying to push it out the door saying like, no, you can keep three together when you can't. It's a thing like that. So you have to make sure you understand the species that you're bringing home, because not everyone does. And most of the time, if you're going to bring a reptile home, you don't want to. When people have a pet and you start putting human kind of emotion into it, and you're like, he's pretty lonely there, he's a friend. And leopard geckos, which are another good start lizard that you should take care of, they don't get that big. And when they go on sale for like $15, you're tempted to like, wow, they'll come in all different colors. Take that one that's orange and then a dark one there. And if you try to keep two of them together, what you end up with is one big fat one and one skinny scrawny one. And most of the people don't even realize that the reason why, because they're not fighting, they're not getting, in most cases, getting beat up. But when you have two of the same kind of lizard in the same cage, it does not have to beat the other one up to let it know. Like, all right, that lady comes back with the crickets. I'm getting 10, you get 2. If I see you eat more than 2, then your tail's going to be shorter tomorrow. And the other lizard will be like, all right, because people understand that they got ways to communicate with each other, and they don't even have to be in the same cage. But some lizards, like with the bearded dragons, you can have a cage over against that wall, and a cage over against that wall. And the bearded dragon, that cage will be up on the rock, and that one will be up on his rock. That one over there starts going, bobbing his head. And when he saves the other one, he goes, you know what, I don't want you there, move. And the other one in the cage saying, how am I supposed to go? and you get intimidated and stressed out because they don't understand the concept of glass. And he doesn't, that one's saying, if you don't get off that rock, and you make me get off my rock, you come over there and make me get off your rock, you're going to regret it. And he's like, can you do that? A specific corner. And it stresses him out. You can make him not eat. And you got to sometimes block the visibility between the two if you want to, the same lizard in the same house. But it's like it's never a situation where they need a friend, they don't want a friend. You can have any kind of animal. You want to be his friend. If you put it in with another one of its own kind, then you're not going to be friends. The only exception is like if you want to have a tank, you want a big tropical tank. This is, like I said, with the grass growing in there are things that you can mix together to make like a little environment that you're never going to pick any of them animals up. You don't even want to think about it. You have the little crested gecko and the frogs live in there, and the grass growing in there, and it's like a beautiful thing. It's like Discovery Channel, it's right in your room. You don't even have to pay the cable bill. And when it's growing lush, it's a beautiful thing. You come to your house and like, you do that? It's the same grass you do in the yard. But it looks nice, it functions for the animal, and the maintenance gets reduced significantly if you've got God helping you. If you've got nature working in there saying, we're on it, who will take care of it now? Don't we clean it, we got it. that's less we have to do. Those little things are living in there, and they don't even realize that they are in captivity. They're in a little ecosystem, happy as can be. And one of the greatest discoveries I had was when I wanted one more thing. I had the lizards, I had a couple of frogs in there, one more thing. And someone called me up and said they had a hermit crab that they didn't want anymore. And hermit crabs are probably the most misunderstood animal sold because they're still selling them like sand for them. And the hermit crabs that they sell in the stores are from the Caribbean, tropical animals. They don't live in sand, they live in like a beach, they live in trees. So I said, yeah, I'll take them. And I figured when they come in, like if it had a normal, regular shell, I would keep them. If it had a stupid cat head or something, it was going back out with the other ones. And I had a normal shell, I put it in there, and my grass was growing nice and neat. And it disappeared in there, he was climbing over the vines, it was a cool thing. It didn't mess with any other animals in there. And well, I noticed like in a week or two that all the grass was gone. And usually one of the little maintenance things you have to do when the grasses start getting kind of dried out and brown, I would sweep it out. It didn't root real deep, so just pull the grass right up. I'd reseed the base layer down there and cover it up with new soil, pack it down. And in a couple of days it was fired up again. And this time I didn't have any of the grass to clean up. I was trying to think, like, it's been so long that it just went away. So we reseeded it, put it in there, and I remember when I was putting the seeds down, I had a standing on a chair to get in there and do it, and I made a big pile of seeds right up against the front glass, and it was obnoxious, and I didn't like it, but I wasn't about to climb back up in that chair because it almost fell. And the hermit crab starts digging in there, and he's eating the seeds, pushing them in deeper with his claws. I'm like, you go, boy. He's fixing it for me. And in a week, when you get that, from Sunday to Sunday, you have grass that tall in there. And I watched that hermit crab eating himself a path around the whole thing, like a little perimeter, like mowing the lawn. So it wasn't going to waste, he was eating it. And I was like, well, you haven't put any hermit crab food in, have you? Oh, yeah. I put some alley cabs in there and he ate that, but now he says, no, you know what, I didn't really like them that much. Holly lice. And he just cleaned that tank for me. So that was the closest thing I had to like the easiest ecosystem you think of right there. You got someone cleaning the tank for you, and you don't even see his poop. It just disappears into the soil, and that's what helps the new generation of grass grow. And like that's a number one for me. And it wasn't even like I was being lazy. It was like now. So we're gonna get him back. If anyone has any questions, we're going to have time for that. And because we're about to close up. And
What's that board in this one?
that's it. He's a boy. And that thing in the front is how they fight with other boys. When they're competing over the females,
Oh, yeah?
yeah, they'll use that to try to flip their other ones over. And they're a lot. They get pretty brutal and vicious when it comes to mating season. Like I said, when he was chasing after that girl and knocking that fence down, it was like, wow, I wouldn't want to like try to get in between him when he gets to 200 pounds. But if you like have any questions, that one's probably like 8, 9 years old now, and they'll live for another 40. They'll live for a long time. The biggest one I ever saw was, they get to, it would be very difficult to lift. You could get to the point where like, I'm not going to be able to carry him to do no more shows. He's got a little wagon or something to pull him around in. And how cooperative he is questionable. But they get way bigger. It's, and quick. By next year, he could be significantly bigger.
Do you have any thoughts about the snake problem in Florida, how they're going to get rid of those?
I think it's probably underreported because from what I know about the people in the reptile trade, the Burmese pythons that they're finding most commonly aren't the worst snakes that could be out there breeding. The reticulated pythons and anacondas can live in that environment too. And those are just as present in the pet trade as the Burmese. So once they're out there breeding, you've got that animal that can get 20 feet. They're big snakes. And if they can live out there, you know, can you go out there and hunt them? It's going to be hard to find them. You know, they're going to try to get whatever they can. They put a bounty on them. They got guys out there looking for them. But Burmese pythons were one of the ones that breed real easy. And all like the young herpetologists who wanted to start out in the breeding business would get like a Burmese python and hope that it had some kind of like unusual color trait into it, so we could make these. And they would sit there and they were my volunteers when I first started the rescue business, and their little calculating heads would be going like, well, if we could get one to be like 80, 90 pounds, they would probably have like 40, 50 eggs the first time. And just figure, you know, we paid $150 for our baby bird, so imagine 40 eggs and $150. It's like, wow, we're rich. And it doesn't work out that way because they end up with, you know, even if they were successful at breeding, which they weren't, then now you've got like a bunch of baby snakes that are born eating adult mice that you got to feed. You got to feed these 40 snakes. You go to the pet store, mice are $2 a piece. So every time you feed them, it's $2 times 40. And your profit margin goes down real quick. And then you try to put ads in the paper and like, no one is all that interested in them. And then you go to the pet stores and say, I got some Burmese python babies interested. And the pet store, a private pet store might say, I'll give you $20 a piece for them. And the kid's like, I already invested $50 in mice. And it didn't turn out to be such a good adventure there. And so then, you know, they're giving them away to their friends and stuff. The first big one I ever got, this kid had it in a speaker box that he cut a hole in the top, put a screen thing on, and had it under his bed. The mom didn't even know he had it. And one day she's cleaning his room, she slides this thing out. And the thing's peeking up at her through the screen top. And I got a 12-foot Burmese python, I got to get rid of it today. And he grew it. I mean, he was taking it out and probably feeding it in the tub and putting it back in there. And he grew it 12 feet in a speaker case. He had a heating pad underneath it and a water bowl in it. That was about it. I don't know. Mother never noticed before. I didn't even smell swampy like that. Is that your socks or? But you know, there's a lot of these big things hiding around. People have told me before, like about down south, where you got a Burmese python. That big one I got that time, the 200-pounder one, he was so big because the guy that lived next door to the guy who owned it was a rabbit breeder. And I'm pretty sure that their Friday nights were probably a 6-pack of beer and a rabbit in the cage with a snake, like, oh, and watch them eat. And they just, and he was breeding that big 20-pound rabbit, so this thing just packed down the weight. And then there's guys out there that like, they want to break the record. They want to grow a 30-foot snake in captivity. That's their dream goal. And there's a guy out in the center of Indiana, one state out like, I think it's like, they got a Burmese python that's like 25, 26 feet long and it weighs 500 pounds plus. You know, it's a huge animal. It's like spread out. They just, they get so fat, they kind of spread out. It's like, big animal. And that same guy that owns him, there was a show on Discovery Channel with him in it, and it showed that great big snake. And he told about the story about how he had been reticulated python too. It was in the 20-foot range. And they had to go in and like change the light bulb in the cage. He went in, got the ladder. They threw a piece of canvas over the snake. So he climbed up on the ladder and unscrewed the bulb. And while he's up there, the snake came out and grabbed him by the leg, pulled him off the ladder, wrapped him up. He started screaming. friend came in, started stabbing the snake with a bayonet. Boom, 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 boom. Snake did not let go of that guy until he was dead, so his heart stopped. They squeezed him so hard, it popped the blood vessels in his eyes. But once his heart stopped, he let go of the guy and chased the other guy. After he was stabbed, chased the other guy out. And once he got out, he closed the door, and they got the guy's heart started again and resuscitated him and lived. And he was telling the story about the thing. And he was telling the story like outside the cage, you know, looking through the glass, you see another big snake. That one that did it died, but another like it in that big cage. And you hear the guy's voice cracking like when he's telling the story, because he must have been terrified. I mean, enormous strength. And I've had a few occasions where I got wrapped up with a bigger one, and it wasn't that big, and I lived, but I had a reticulated python. He was 12 feet, and I remember I had two of them. I fed one in a separate cage, fed him. I put them back in the cage together because those little pits in front of their face, they detect heat, and he could detect that dead one rat inside another snake, and he said, "Oh, another one." He grabbed that snake, and that snake coiled around his head, and they all tangled up. And I'm like, "Oh, crap." And I go in there and I pull them apart, and the littler one had a jaw like, "Eh." And I got her and put her back in the cage I fed her in, and I forgot to close the cover on the big one. And I'm on the phone to the vet. I'm calling because I had a vet that would do x-rays for cost. And I needed to x-ray, I had to make sure it wasn't broken, it would just relocate it, we'll put it back. And while I'm on the phone, I see that big one cruising out, like, oh, okay. So I hang up and go grab him by the head, and I pick my hand up like in the kind of middle of him, because I don't want to put too much weight on his head, I want to choke him. So I'm being polite to him, and when I lift it up here, he just wrapped his body all the way up from the middle of his body to his tail. Oh, now I can't let go of his head because he's a biter, and I can't do nothing with his hand now, and I'm stuck. Now what do I do? I'm thinking, oh, well, put his head down and step on it, unravel his tail, and well, if he tangles my legs up and I fall, I could be in trouble. He's longer than I am. And finally, he's getting mad, and he's squeezing tighter, and he peed. And I had a sleeveless shirt on, and it soaked my arm with pee. And I was able to like slide it out of that coil, and then drag him back to his cage by his head. Did not care one bit. And then when I put it back in, I noticed they had like a slice on him about that long from when the other snake bit him, and then he coiled, and things had shifted like went and just slid it. So after I got the other ones pushed back in, I got it x-rayed, it was okay, I go back. I got to go back in and deal with that big slice on the snake and all that finally. But fortunately the vet gave me some kind of experimental like spray bandage, and I was able to hold the skin together and go and spray it. And it healed so perfectly, it didn't even need a scar. But you can see the meat right underneath, like fishing, just put together, and beautiful job. After he ate, it just didn't move for the next couple of weeks, so we went to the shed mode, and shedding helps heal the skin, and that was that. So he healed, I lived. I was much more cautious after that. Any other questions?
Do you use the easy seed? Is that what it is? The easy seed?
That, and I've been experimenting too with getting like a couple of brands of seed and get the seed in, and some of the other kind that says like a little bit deeper rooting, just to see if it will last longer. With the wild birds, even if you're patient, you can kind of sift out the little round like rice seeds or whatever those are, and those grow pretty good. They make something different, little curly things rather than just a straight up grass. Okay, back over to the speaker of the house.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you, Ren. That was great. I do want to let you know that Ren is also a wildlife photographer, and he has a website you can check out, which is www.nopause.com. And you can also check out some of his pictures on his Facebook page, which is Ron Wolf. It's WULFF. And some really awesome pictures. We were checking them out a little while ago. Thank you so much for coming. And just to let you all know, as I said, we do this every first Thursday of every month. Next month we will have, we'll have Betty Lou Sandy, who's an accredited organic land care professional. And she's going to come and talk to us and demonstrate for us how specific plantings can attract birds and butterflies and how you can incorporate those plantings into your landscape. So, check it out every month because we've got great stuff coming. Ron has been gracious to say he will hang out and talk and answer some questions.
We'll be surprised to see you back in the future under different applications.
Thank you all.